Tale of Kuzen Zalag, the golden light of Sunglory. Hi everyone, All Things D&D is back with another story. It really is a testament to a great D&D campaign when your party manages to ascend to godhood. Most of my campaigns never even come close to that level, but I love hearing about those amazing multi-year campaigns. Listen to this story and tell us about your incredible campaigns. Our tale begins in the Church of Lathander, in a small backwater town named Phom. Kuzen was a follower of Lathander, raised from birth as a child of Lathander, a child left on the church's doorstep, into an influential figure of the community. He led sermons, helped their problems, and was all around a paragon of the community. As both an Aasimar and a sorcerer with an affinity for light magic, he was well respected by many of his brothers and sisters in the church, although he felt a bit controlled at times by his superiors. Everything was well for Kuzen and his church, until Phom was besieged by plague-ridden undead led by a demonic herald of pestilence. As the town fought to defend itself, Kuzen wished to fight by their side. It was his belief that he wielded the light of Lathander itself, and that it was meant to be used to defend the people. The rest of the church, seeing Kuzen as too valuable to lose in such a battle, were able to convince him to take refuge with them in the church's cellar. The town's defenses fell not long after the clergyman made it inside, inadvertently causing a statue to fall and block the only exit. For 2 months, Kuzen waited in the dark. For rescue or death, he really didn't know. However, the food stores were limited, and the rest of the priests refused food, choosing for him to have it instead. Up until they all had starved to death, leaving Kuzen trapped with their bodies in deafening silence that lasted until the sounds of battle could be heard overhead. Kuzen tried to make himself heard, pounding on the trapdoor and shouting for someone, anyone, to hear him. The sounds faded to nothing, but Kuzen found himself saved by the Archbishop of Lathander's church, Asurian, who was traveling with a party of adventurers to cleanse the town. Asurian told Kuzen he was looking for him specifically, which was surprising, as Kuzen had thought he was relatively unknown to the heads of the church in Vardenfell, but Asurian brought him to the party to better protect him, before vanishing quickly after. Kuzen then met everyone: a gnome wizard, Sog, a kobold barbarian, Mokol, a human druid, Iwan, and an elf ranger, Kinthur. They were there to remove the blight from the town, and return an elf woman to her ancestral home after saving her from a shadow cult. Kuzen's light magic proved a pretty effective boon against the cult, making them a bit more manageable. The elf woman turned out to be a werewolf, and the cult managed to steal her away to turn her into some form of demonic werewolf. They were unfortunately successful, and it was nearly permanent. However, the party was able to reverse the transformation and save her. The reward turned out to be the town itself, being granted lordship of it as well as the ability to use it as their base of operations. Before the party could rebuild, however, the druid made a deal with the Fae to restore the forest that was also contaminated. The Fae answered this request by speeding up time by 230 years, while putting all inside the elf's home in a form of stasis. When the effects subsided, the forest was much larger and had reclaimed Phom, and was home to incredibly deadly wildlife. However, the party managed to carve out a safe haven for themselves, and even began to restore the town. While restoration efforts were underway, the party got word that the Church of Lathander had become more and more radical and zealous, believing all non-human races were inferior, and an affront to their god. This contrast with how Kuzen remembered them led to a fair bit of internal conflict, causing him to lose his faith more and more, until he denounced it altogether. It seems almost like fate saw fit to intervene here, it seemed. For a long time, Kuzen believed himself to be an actual child of Lathander, rather than the title his church would use for orphans left on their door. However, by complete accident, with a homebrew wild magic table, Kuzen had a chance meeting with his real father. Aminader, which actually almost killed the party just with that act alone. Aminader was happy to see Kuzen, as a father would be upon reuniting with his long-lost son. Kuzen had many questions, not many of which Aminader was able or willing to answer. However, he did instill in Kuzen a new purpose: attaining godhood. According to his father, Kuzen had until the summer solstice in 3 months to find a lost temple and become a fully fledged god of the sun, lest he be too corrupted by material influences to properly ascend. This led to a time of recovering from shock for Kuzen, as he had pretty much found out his whole life up to that point was a lie, and sparked a period of self-discovery. He found out the church had taken him away and rewrote his memories, making him believe he had been with them since he was young. He also began putting resources into finding this abandoned temple, though since he dared not go it alone, he wasn't able to make much headway. During this time, he also began a relationship with the only other Aasimar known to the group, Misty, who was a celestial who had also suffered from misplaced memories. Party members came and went, Kinthur leaving to go on their own adventures, and the party was met with Sylvia, a Knoll paladin, who was searching for her family. They adventured for a time and eventually ran afoul of a group of necromancer bards, and had a big fight with them in the skeleton of a giant dragon. At the tail end of the fight, Mokol, who had actually become a Sphinx warlock, fun homebrew subclass sparked by a wedding, was hit with a power word kill. However, his patron swapped places with him to take the spell and die, only surviving because Kuzen was able to get to her just in time to cast Revivify. We finished Sylvia's arc by finding a way back in time so she could save her mothers, buffed to the 9 hells and back so she could rip and tear through the soldiers like a hot knife through butter. This ended up messing with the timeline, because we had a lot of fun messing with time the first go-around, and Sylvia became a barbarian fighter instead of a paladin. The party's adventures continue, and Iwan, having turned into a tree folk, ended up turning into a proper tree. He was then replaced by Akihiko, a Kitsune bard demon character, and we ended up pulling from the deck of many things. Kuzen pulling the throne card. Half the party, Kuzen, Sylvia, and Mokol, went to clear out the keep earned by the card, while Sog and Akihiko went to go save Sog's sister from the church. Well, the party found out the keep was owned by the necromancers from earlier, and somehow actually won that fight, killing most, recruiting too. There are still some undead in the vicinity, but we decided to go back to it eventually, which we never did actually. Immediately afterwards, the party got to watch as Lathander descended from the heavens to smite Vardenfell, his holy city, as his church had strayed too far from what it was meant to be, and become way too corrupt. The ramifications were felt all over the continent, even where we were on the opposite side. Not long after this, Akihiko ended up getting the boot and ultimately getting replaced with Celeste, a half-elf astrologer, who was actually able to point Kuzen in the right direction towards the Temple of Amontor he's supposed to go to reach godhood. But before that, the party went to help Mokol rescue a tribe of kobolds from null enslavement. The party burst into the camp, spells flying, weapons swinging. However, blood was being drained from the fallen into the mines. When the party followed, partially because Celeste was captured during the fight, and ended up stumbling on a summoning ritual for Ionogu, which was completed as they entered. Outmanned and outgunned, the party grabbed Celeste and made their escape. Once outside with a number of spells and shenanigans, the party managed to turn the mine into a giant crater, killing all inside. When the party returned to Fam, the plan shifted to helping Kuzen reach his godhood, with Mokol and Sylvia retiring to bring in Ishkara, a scorpion lady druid, and Astaroth, a tiefling rogue, before traveling to the desert in search of the lost temple. Kuzen, having really only tapped into his potential sparingly, ended up helping many of the people of the trading town the party made it to, and ended up starting a little bit of a religion to himself, by introducing himself as an acolyte of Kuzen, rather than Kuzen himself, doing things like distributing water and healing diseases. The rest of the party questioned this decision, but ultimately went with it. After their stay in the trading town, the party proceeded to the first of 3 temples that could potentially be the one they were looking for. Upon reaching it, they were met with automaton and salamander-like guards, stating it was dedicated to their god, who was very much not Aminator. After much prayer and divination, they were able to ultimately figure out where they needed to go. Ishkara and Kuzen went in ahead, communing with the spirits there, who were rather enthusiastic about Kuzen being there, although Kuzen could not really see them. Sog and Astaroth sought blessing from their respective gods and patrons before entering, so that they might not burst into flames. Deep in the temple was a giant floating man with many arms, with barriers blocking them from reaching him. Kuzen and Ishkara were able to push through the first and second barriers, while Sog and Celeste were helping Astaroth, who shot herself trying to attack the floating guy. When Kuzen reached the third barrier, everyone else was rewound back in time. So back to the entrance of the room, having the same conversation as earlier. Kuzen, however, connected with the being and discovered that it was a part of him, his godly avatar versus his current body, being his mortal avatar. When the two came together, Kuzen was able to see the present and the moments before the fall of the temple 600 years earlier, and was given a choice. Either stay and save the people, restoring the temple and changing the timeline at the cost of his godhood, or take the power of godhood and sacrifice the people in the past. Kuzen thought hard on it, trying to think up a third option. However, his time was limited, and he apologized to those who had long passed before ascending to godhood. His first act as a freshly awakened god was to allow Misty to ascend as well, restoring her memories and helping her return to her place in the celestial realms. I summed up a lot of the events of the campaign, but that was mostly due to the fact that this campaign has been running for roughly 2 years now and lots has happened. This is also 99% from memory, so I likely forgot a little bit here and there. However, this campaign has been arguably one of my favorite campaigns I've ever played and ever, and I've got to give all the props to the DM and the other players, who I wouldn't have wanted to go on this adventure with any other group of people. Truly an epic moment for this player and their group. This is what D&D is all about. Please let us know what you think and comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, All Things D&D. Our videos are posted every 5 days, so stay tuned for more amazing Dungeons & Dragons content.